don't buy any of the content for this game. I'm just kidding. Actually, Guild Wars 2 is an excellently priced game, and we are going to go over the various expansions and living world content, cover what the costs are, and what you get from the content in terms of hard account features, as well as content access that you might be the most interested in. In short, I hope to give you everything you need to know to make an accurate buying decision. I personally have 2 accounts that are fully unlocked, a main account and a 0 to hero account, and I haven't regretted my purchases yet. I am not an ArenaNet partner. This video is not sponsored, and I do not have any referral links. I just want to make sure that you, my humble viewer, are well informed when choosing to spend money in the Guild Wars 2 universe. First up, we will cover all of the hard locked expansions. These are account unlocks that you have to spend actual money on, meaning you cannot unlock them via the in-game gold conversion, cash shop, and yes, some of the content in this game can be unlocked through gold to gems conversion, but we'll cover that when it comes up. Let's start with the individual packaged items with the Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire combo. These 2 expansions are largely touted as the best content in the game, and with this package you are unlocking a massive 18 elite specializations plus 8 maps, all of the base mounts, which includes the Griffin, and all but 1 raid wing. Many years ago, these expansions were boxed separately, but for the 2025 crowd, you cannot get one without the other. This is by far the best one-time purchase you can make in the Guild Wars 2 shop. The maps associated with these 2 expansions are largely regarded as some of the best from a story perspective, while Heart of Thorns is largely considered the gold standard for open world content. Additionally, 7 raid wings are available to those with Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, which gives you access to the legendary Envoy armor collection and the legendary Trinket Coalescence. This bundle is my go-to recommendation for anyone enjoying the base game of Guild Wars 2 and wants to take things one step further. The elite specializations associated with these 2 expansions are still largely competitive on most classes, with specs like Scourge, Reaper, Dragon Hunter, Firebrand, Druid, and Soul Beast, and of course the Chronomancer. Heart of Thorns has some of the most repeatable meta events with maps like Auric Basin and Tangled Depths, while Path of Fire has more on-demand content with bounty trains and legendary bounties. Between the maps, metas, raids, and specializations, this bundle gives you full access to the entry-level in-game Guild Wars 2 content. The next expansion that you can unlock is the End of Dragons expansion. The End of Dragons expansion is a nice addition if you like what you got from the Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire bundle. While being the same price, does hold its weight in terms of value and is a fair value comparison if you compare it to either Heart of Thorns or Path of Fire individually. You get 9 elite specializations, and some of the ones that are unlocked with this expansion do absolutely change your class. Willbender, Virtuoso, Mechanist, and Harbinger, to name a few, all really change the way that those classes play. You get a total of 5 maps, with 4 of them being some of the best open world maps in the game. The primary expansion feature of the End of Dragons expansion added more casual content with fishing and skiffs as its primary feature, which is a nice addition for players who enjoy collections and low intensity gameplay. It also added some of the most engaging strike missions to the game with Aetherblade Hideout, Junlai Jade Junkyard, Kining Overlook, and Harvest Temple. They all have normal and challenge mode fights for 10-man squads, and these strike missions took place of traditional raid wings, and the normal mode encounters are reasonably easy for casual players with minimal coordination, and the challenge modes associated with these strike missions are definitely on par with the difficulty of raids, if not exceeding the difficulty of raids. End of Dragons does have an additional mount with the Siege Turtle, which is a fun addition, though it is less game-changing than the core mounts that you get with the Path of Fire expansion. For those players who are legendary enthusiasts, the End of Dragons expansion added the Aurene Legendary Collection, which have 6 variation skins associated with them. These legendaries have unique draw, footfall, trail, and particle effects, and even include an execute animation, which is unique to their dragon variant. This execution effect is actually unique to Gen 3 legendaries, and it isn't available in the previous generations. Moving on, we have Secrets of the Obscure. Secrets of the Obscure is the first of the mini expansions, meaning that they were significantly smaller in scope than the other two options previously mentioned. Buying Secrets of the Obscure is only advisable for two key account features. One of them is easy access to the Sky Scale, which is a flying mount, and I will talk a little bit more about that later. And the other is for the weapon mastery. Those individuals that do have End of Dragons, Path of Fire, and Heart of Thorns, and the elite specializations associated with them, they have in essence unlocked the ability to use a new weapon type for that class. For example, the Necromancer gets access to the Greatsword if they are specialized as a Reaper, while the Scourge gets a torch and the Harbinger gets a pistol. Well, with the Weapon Master training, it allows you to use these weapons regardless of the elite specialization that you have selected. For some classes, this is absolutely game-changing. For others, it matters less because of how ingrained that specialization is with their preferred weapon. In addition to this, they did add new weapons to the classes, so the Warrior got Staff, Ranger got Maces, Mesmer got Rifle, and so on. These changes had various impacts in different game modes, some of them being extremely useful in PvE, while others were more useful in PvP and World vs. World environments. This expansion did give players access to a set of open world legendary armor, which is completed through grinding rifts. Rifts are low engagement, high repetition content, but it is easily and readily available. For players who do not want to engage in PvE raid environments or more coordinated PvE encounters, they can now choose this method to get legendary armor instead. This expansion added 2 strike missions, and one of them is on par on difficulty with about the End of Dragons strike missions, or the easier challenge modes and raids, while the other one is one of the hardest encounters in the game, and it has one of 2 legendary challenge modes that are in the game. There was also 50-man instance encounter introduced. They call them convergences, which have a normal and challenge mode difficulty, and these are done in either private squads or on a public map timer. They're reasonably lucrative, but they are most valuable for people going for that open world legendary armor. I would only recommend buying Secrets of the Obscure for players who already own Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, and End of Dragons, or are solely interested in open world legendary armor, or gaining access to a singular, extremely hard encounter. Moving on to Janthir Wilds. Janthir Wilds is the current released expansion. It gave every class access to the Spear and to the Warclaw mount. It is expected to release a total of 4 maps, with 3 of them currently already released, and the final update is happening in June. The maps are far more relaxed, with only one open world boss and various event chains throughout. The expansion is largely focused around the raid wing that was released with it, which is on par with some of the harder raid wings for normal mode or easier challenge modes of various other content. It does feature a new legendary challenge mode, which is the new hardest content currently. They did add a Janthir Wild specific convergence, which is that 50-man content, and it is mostly useful for the Janthir Wild specific legendary item, which is the legendary Spear. There is also going to be a release of an open world legendary backpack with this new content release, and like Secrets of the Obscure, this expansion would be low on my list of recommendations. Should only be picked up if you are really interested in the Spear, the Warclaw, or the Raid Wing. These 4 items are considered the box expansions for Guild Wars 2. However, it is not the only content available for Guild Wars 2. There are other releases that I highly recommend, but the good news is that you don't have to actually buy them with real money. You can farm in-game currency and unlock them via the gem store, and we are going to now talk about the Living World season. Living World Season 1 is included for free, and so congratulations. Starting with Living World Season 2. Season 2 is largely a history of and a prelude to the Heart of Thorns expansion. It was released prior to Heart of Thorns release, and it kind of shows its age. There are no new maps associated with Season 2 Living World, and it does have a fairly good story associated with it. It does pale in comparison to the later seasons. Season 2 does have some of the most challenging instance story content with challenging achievements associated with them, and I wouldn't say that Season 2 is not worth it. However, it is basically a prototype for the following seasons. Living World World Season 3. Season 3 gives you access to 6 new maps, which are Bloodstone Fen, Ember Bay, Bitterfrost Frontier, Lake Doric, Draconis Mons, and Cyrus Landing. And most of these are rather dated. However, they do give you access to the legendary trinket collection Aurora. In addition, they give you access to various map currencies, which are used for Ascended trinkets and Ascended backpacks, which make it easier to get best in slot gear. The story and maps associated are actually fairly good, even though they are showing their age now. Bitterfrost Frontier is probably the most valuable due to its currency of winter berries. Living World Season 3 follows a post-Heart of Thorns era story and has some follow-up with the core game, and it largely sets the stage for the Path of Fire expansion. Living World Season 4, this season is largely considered the pinnacle of the Guild Wars 2 Living World. This introduced a map currency known as Volatile Magic, which is shared across Season 4 maps. This Living World season introduced 2 mounts, the Skyscale and the Roller Beetle, and before Secrets of the Obscure was released, this was the only way to get the Skyscale mount. It is still a good alternative if you aren't interested in the Secrets of the Obscure stuff, even though it does have a more challenging collection than the Secrets of the Obscure method. This season introduced 6 maps total, with Domain of Istan, Sansa Isles, Domain of Korna, Jahai Bluffs, Thunderhead Peaks, and Dragonfall, with Dragonfall being the most valuable of them for meta event farms. Though each of these maps does have a good map-wide meta event, it has good event chains, and it does have bounties. The only one that is kind of lackluster is Domain of Korna, which in present day it is largely used as a fish farm. Season 4 also gives you access to the legendary trinket collection Vision, alongside 4 armor sets and some of the best storytelling in the game. The last segment we have to talk about is the Icebrood Saga. The Icebrood Saga is largely valuable for its currency being eternal ice shards, and for its high value strikes and meta events. There are 7 strike missions associated with the Icebrood Saga. All of them are reasonably easy and farmed daily by the community. Drizzlewood Coast is one of the highest player driven farm maps and is considered one of the most engaging map farms in the game. It also gives you access to Dragonstorm, which has a private and a public instance associated that gets farmed frequently and has good rewards. And overall, the Icebrood Saga serves as a good addition to the mid-core player looking for both open world content and easy, rewarding, and repeatable instanced content. So now that we know what we are talking about, and this synopsis is far from comprehensive considering there are armor skins in the mix and so on, but from my honest opinion, with no biases, no referral links, no anything, what do I think is actually worth your money and time as a new player looking to drop a couple of bucks to get into Guild Wars 2? The best value option is by far the Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire bundle. But if you actually intend on playing the game long term, and by that I mean like for a year or more, I recommend you buy the Ultimate Edition bundle that gives you all of the expansions and the Living World seasons. And I will explain the difference. I do not recommend that you pay full price for any of this. Guild Wars 2 expansions frequently go on sale, and the Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire bundle can be as cheap as like $8. The Ultimate Edition with Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, and End of Dragons, and all of the Living World stuff is often 50% off, so the total cost is $50, which is an absolute deal. So that leaves us with Secrets of the Obscure and Janthier Wilds, which don't really go on sale yet, and I think they just started giving a discount for Secrets of the Obscure. I will say, unless you really are into the game and you absolutely want to min-max your character with the most optimal DPS weapon, or you are interested in the legendary challenge mode level content, I do not recommend buying Secrets of the Obscure or Janthier Wilds at their current prices as a newcomer, and I mean as a newcomer. For $25, you do get a decent amount of content. I bought both Soto and Janthier Wilds twice each, both for my main account and for my alt account, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I regret it. It's fine. But if you are just getting into the game, you absolutely do not need these expansions to enjoy the game or be competitive in the game. You aren't getting ripped off by buying it by any means, but if you can just get Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire for $8 to $10, I would definitely recommend getting that before you buy either either Janthier Wilds or Secrets of the Obscure. You're going to have more fun, and your account is going to be more unlocked than by buying either of those expansions coming from base game. And with that, I hope this helps you make your decisions. And if you have any questions, you are free to ask them in the comments below. Thanks for watching. A big thanks to all of my subscribers, and a special thanks to all of my members who support the channel. Thanks again, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.